The sky above the ruined colony was a sickly gray, filled with ash and drifting smoke. The wind carried the bitter smell of burnt metal and old fire, and the ground was cracked like broken glass. Among the shattered buildings, a young alien girl stood alone, her thin arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her people had left in a rush, fleeing in ships that roared into the dark sky, leaving her behind. She had begged them to go without her, begged them not to waste food or strength on someone like her. Her voice had been weak, her heart already half broken, and her words had been taken as permission. Now she was alone, surrounded by silence, her body trembling from fear and hunger. In the distance, heavy footsteps echoed against the hollow streets. A tall figure walked slowly through the rubble, wearing a tattered human coat. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but his eyes scanned the ruins with sharp awareness. This was Marcus, one of the few human survivors who had stayed behind when others escaped. He was searching the colony for supplies, maybe a reason to keep moving, maybe just proof he was not the last. But instead of broken machines or scraps of food, he found her, standing in the open like a ghost. The alien girl stiffened as soon as she saw him. Her people had always spoken of humans with suspicion, calling them dangerous and strange. Her first thought was to run, but her legs felt heavy and there was nowhere to go. Marcus stopped a few steps away, his shadow falling across her fragile frame. He noticed how her skin shimmered faintly under the gray light, a mark of her species' beauty. But her eyes were empty, filled with the weight of being unwanted. For a long moment, they only stared at each other, two survivors from two dying worlds. "Why are you still here?" Marcus asked, his voice rough but not unkind. The girl lowered her head and whispered, "I told them to leave me. I'm not strong. I'm not useful." Her words carried shame, like a blade cutting into her own heart. Marcus frowned. The answer made no sense to him. Humans never left one of their own behind without a fight. He took a slow step closer, his boots crunching over broken glass. "You should not be here alone," he said. "This place will kill you." The girl shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "No, leave me. I beg them. I do not deserve to go on," she cried, her voice breaking. Marcus studied her carefully, torn between reason and instinct. He could walk away, pretend he had never seen her, save himself from extra weight and danger. But something deep inside resisted, something human that refused to abandon life when it asked for mercy. He remembered the faces of those he had lost, the silence of empty camps, the heavy guilt of survivors. Looking at her, fragile and trembling, was like facing that guilt again. "Maybe you don't see it," he said softly, "but you are still alive, and that means there's still a chance." The girl's lips trembled, as if she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Above them, the sound of distant engines rumbled, ships hunting through the sky. Both of them froze, their eyes lifting toward the noise. The colony was not safe. Enemies and scavengers often came searching for what little remained. Marcus grabbed the girl's arm gently but firmly. "We can't stay here," he said. "If you want to live, follow me." She hesitated, staring at his hand, his human skin against hers. Her mind screamed to pull away, to stay hidden, to fade into nothing as she had begged for. But her heart whispered something else, a tiny spark of hope she thought had died. At last, with trembling steps, she followed him into the ruins. Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, felt heavy with danger. Her breaths came fast, her mind filled with questions. Who was this man? Why would a human care for her? Marcus led the way without fear, though his eyes moved sharply, always watching, always ready. For the first time since her people left, she was not alone, and though her voice still whispered, "I beg them to leave me," a new thought began to grow. Perhaps this human saw something she could not, something worth saving. The ruins stretched endlessly before them, the silence broken only by the crunch of their steps. The girl did not know where he was taking her, or if there was any safety left in the world, but she could not deny the strange strength that his presence gave her. For the first time, the weight of being unwanted felt just a little lighter. And in her heart, hidden beneath layers of fear, a fragile question began to rise. Was this the start of a new fate, or just another path to sorrow? The answer waited in the shadows ahead. Marcus moved quickly through the broken colony, the girl following close behind. Her steps were shaky, her breath uneven, but she tried not to fall behind. Every broken wall and collapsed tower seemed to lean over them like a warning. The air smelled of rust and old smoke, a reminder that death had lived here for too long. The girl whispered, almost to herself, "You should not help me. I will slow you down. I am nothing." Her words stung, sharp like shattered glass, and Marcus stopped for a moment, turning to face her. His eyes were tired, but behind that tiredness was something stronger, a flame that would not die. "You are not nothing," he said firmly. "Do not say that again." The girl lowered her head, confused by the weight of his words. No one had spoken to her like that before. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the sound of distant machinery echoed. Raiders, scavengers, or worse. Marcus motioned for her to stay silent. He crouched near a wall, scanning the streets with sharp eyes. The girl crouched too, her small body trembling, but she kept quiet. In the silence, she studied him, his steady breath, his alert stance, his calm strength. Humans had always been described as reckless, but this one moved with careful purpose. After the noise faded, Marcus led her through a broken doorway. Inside was an abandoned shelter, walls cracked, but safer than the open street. He dropped his bag, pulling out a few scraps of dried food. Without hesitation, he handed most of it to her. Her eyes widened. She shook her head. "No, I cannot take this. You need it." Marcus only pushed the food closer. "Eat. You will not survive if you keep refusing life." Her hands trembled as she accepted the food. The first bite made her throat ache, but it was warm, and for a moment, hope touched her chest. She whispered, "Why? Why do you help me?" Marcus leaned back against the wall, his gaze distant. "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind," he said softly. The words struck her heart, deep and unexpected. She wanted to ask more, but the look in his eyes told her his pain was buried far back. She stayed silent, chewing slowly, though her thoughts were loud. Outside, a sudden crash echoed through the ruins. The shelter walls shook slightly. Marcus was on his feet at once, scanning for danger. The girl's fear rose again, her body frozen. Marcus gripped her arm gently. "Stay close, do not run unless I tell you." His tone was not cruel. It was steady, like a shield against the fear. For the first time, she felt safer standing near someone than hiding alone. Hours passed as night crept over the colony. The sky turned darker, heavy clouds covering the stars. The girl sat by the broken wall, watching Marcus clean a small weapon. She thought of her people, of the way they had looked at her with pity before leaving. Their voices had called her weak, useless, a burden. Now, sitting in the ruined shelter with a human, she wondered if they had been wrong. Marcus finally looked up, his voice calm but serious. "This world will not let us rest for long," he said. "If you want to live, we need to move when the light returns." The girl's heart tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him again to leave her behind. But when she looked at him, when she saw the steady way he prepared, her words would not come. Instead, she asked quietly, "Do you really think I can survive?" Marcus met her gaze without hesitation. "Yes," he said simply, "if you choose to." The silence after his words was heavy, yet filled with something she had never felt before. Not pity, not rejection, but belief. It scared her, and yet it warmed her at the same time. As the night deepened, her eyes grew heavy, but before sleep took her, a single thought echoed in her mind. Perhaps this human was wrong, or perhaps he had seen something in her that even she could not see. Either way, tomorrow would test them both. Morning came with a dull gray light spilling through the cracks of the ruined shelter. Marcus woke first, his senses sharp, his mind already mapping the path they needed to take. The girl stirred slowly, her body weak but her spirit restless. She rubbed her tired eyes and looked at him, her thoughts circling with doubt and questions. Marcus handed her a small piece of bread-like rations. "Eat. You will need strength," he said. She hesitated, staring at the food, then nodded and ate in silence. Her heart carried a strange weight, not of hunger, but of the human's steady belief in her. It unsettled her, because belief was something she had never owned. When they stepped outside, the colony was colder than the night before. The broken metal towers leaned like skeletons, and the streets stretched empty. The silence was broken only by distant echoes, machines or raiders. It was impossible to know. Marcus led the way, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. The girl followed closely, clutching her thin cloak around her small frame. As they walked, they passed wreckage of old battles. Twisted machines, broken weapons, signs of lives erased long ago. The girl shivered as she remembered stories of this place told by her elders. How many had fallen here, and how many had been forgotten? But Marcus did not slow. He moved with determination, as if each step carried meaning. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence, sharp and metallic. The girl froze, fear locking her in place, her body trembling. From the shadows crawled a machine, half broken but still alive. Its eyes glowed faintly red, its claws scraping the ground as it dragged itself closer. She gasped, stumbling backward, her voice shaking. "It hunts." Marcus drew his weapon without hesitation, placing himself between her and the machine. The creature hissed, gears grinding, sparks flashing from its broken shell. It lunged forward, faster than its damaged body should have allowed. Marcus fired once, the sound echoing like thunder through the ruins. The bullet tore through its frame, but the machine kept moving. He fired again, sparks exploded, metal shrieked, until finally it collapsed in a heap of smoke and fire. The girl stared wide-eyed, her chest heaving, her heart pounding. She had never seen such courage, such calm strength in the face of death. When the smoke cleared, Marcus looked back at her, his voice steady. "You are safe now," he said, though his tone carried no pride, only focus. But she shook her head, her eyes wet. "No, you saved me again. I only bring danger." Marcus's brow furrowed. He stepped closer, his gaze heavy with meaning. "Danger comes to all who live," he said. "Survival is not about being free from danger. It is about choosing to fight against it." His words struck her deeper than the gunfire had. For a long moment she could not move, her mind replaying them. Fight against it. The phrase echoed like a fire inside her. She had begged her people to leave her, had accepted herself as weak. But this human, this stranger, spoke as if she still had a chance. They continued their path, moving toward the old transport station on the far edge of the colony. The girl walked a little steadier now, her steps less uncertain, but danger lingered in every shadow, every broken corridor. As night began to fall again, they found shelter in a hollowed building. The girl sat near the cracked wall, the sound of distant winds filling the silence. She turned to Marcus, her voice soft. "Why do you keep me alive, even when I beg you not to?" Marcus's eyes met hers, steady and unshaken. "Because life is not meant to be thrown away," he said, "and I refuse to watch it fade when I can still fight for it." Her breath caught, her chest tightening with emotions she could not name. In that moment, something inside her shifted like a lock opening for the first time. Perhaps she was not meant to be left behind. Perhaps this journey was not only his choice, but hers too. As the night deepened, the ruins outside seemed to whisper with unseen threats. The girl lay awake, listening to Marcus's steady breathing, her thoughts restless, her heart torn between fear and a new fragile hope. Tomorrow would bring more trials, more dangers. She knew this. But for the first time since she begged her people to abandon her, she wondered if survival was possible. And in the quiet of that broken shelter, She dared to imagine a future she had never allowed herself to dream. The morning was colder than the last. The wind carried a sharp edge that made the girl pull her thin cloak tighter. Marcus walked ahead with steady steps, his eyes scanning every corner of the ruined colony. They were heading toward the old transport station, a place that might still hold supplies or even shelter. But the path was long and filled with dangers that waited in silence. The girl's thoughts twisted with doubt as she followed him. Her people had left her behind without hesitation, and now she walked with a stranger who refused to give up on her. Every time she looked at his back, steady and unshaken, she wondered what drove him. Humans were strange, reckless, yet there was something in them that burned brighter than fear. By midday, they stopped inside the shell of a collapsed tower. Marcus handed her water, his own share smaller than hers. She hesitated before drinking, guilt pressing against her chest. "You always give me more," she said softly. "Why do you starve yourself for me?" Marcus looked at her with calm eyes. "Because I have chosen to keep you alive, that is enough reason." Her throat tightened, the words heavy like a stone in her chest. After a long silence, the girl finally spoke, her voice trembling. "My people, they left me because of our law," she said, her eyes fixed on the cracked floor. Marcus frowned, listening carefully. "In my clan, the weak are abandoned. Those who cannot fight or carry weight are left behind. It is the way of survival," she continued. Her voice shook as she confessed. "I begged them to leave me. I believed it was right. I believed I was nothing." Tears welled in her eyes. She turned away, ashamed. Marcus's jaw tightened, anger flickering in his gaze. "That is not survival," he said firmly. "That is cruelty dressed as law." The girl flinched at his words, and used to hearing anyone challenge the rules of her people. She whispered, "It has always been this way. I thought it was the only truth." Marcus shook his head. "Truth is not what kills the weak. Truth is what protects them until they find strength." The girl looked at him, her eyes wide, her heart pounding with a feeling she could not explain. For the first time, she began to wonder if her people had been wrong, if her begging had been a mistake. Their conversation was cut short by the sound of distant shouts. Marcus stiffened, pulling her behind a broken wall. Voices echoed through the ruins, harsh and sharp, raiders moving closer. The girl's body trembled, fear surging through her veins. Marcus's hand rested gently on her shoulder, his voice a whisper, "Stay low, stay silent." Together they crouched in the shadows, the footsteps drawing nearer. Through a crack in the wall, the girl saw them. 3 raiders, armed with rusted weapons and cruel laughter, scavenging through the ruins. Her heart pounded so loud, she feared they would hear it. Marcus kept still, his breathing slow and controlled, waiting for the right moment. Minutes felt like hours until the raiders finally passed, their voices fading into the distance. The girl let out a shaky breath, her whole body trembling. Marcus gave her a small nod. "You did well," he said quietly. They waited until silence returned before moving again. As they walked, the girl felt a strange fire inside her, his words replaying in her mind. Not cruelty, but survival. Not weakness, but a chance for strength. Her steps grew a little steadier, her fears still there, but softened by his belief. By nightfall, they reached the edge of the transport station. The broken structure loomed ahead, metal beams twisted like bones. Marcus stopped, scanning the shadows, his weapon ready. The girl stood beside him, her heart heavy but burning with new questions. Her people had abandoned her, but this human, this stranger, fought for her without hesitation. And in the silence of the ruined world, she dared to wonder, could she fight for him too when the time came? The answer waited in the darkness of the transport station. The transport station was darker than the ruins behind them. Its roof had collapsed in places, and twisted beams jutted upward like broken claws. The wind whistled through the gaps, carrying the smell of rust and old fire. Marcus stepped carefully, scanning each shadow, his weapon ready. The girl followed close, her hands shaking, but her eyes sharper than before. They found a hollow space beneath a half-fallen platform. Marcus dropped his bag and checked their supplies. Only a little food, almost no water. The girl sat quietly, her heart heavy with guilt. Each bite she took felt like stealing life from him, yet he never complained. Instead, he gave her the larger share, as if his choice was unshakable. As night settled, the silence felt heavier. The girl stared at Marcus as he cleaned his weapon, his movements calm and steady. "Why do you trust me?" she asked softly. "I am not your kind. I am nothing to you." Marcus looked up, his eyes tired but warm. "You are alive," he said simply, "and that is enough reason." Her chest tightened, her thoughts spinning. No one had ever given her worth so easily. The next day, danger found them again. While searching the far corner of the station, they heard voices, harsh and cruel. Raiders had entered, their boots clanging against metal floors. Marcus motioned for silence, pulling the girl deeper into the shadows. She held her breath, her body frozen with fear. Through the cracks, she saw them, 5 armed figures, laughing as they searched. One of the raiders kicked over a pile of rubble, his voice echoing. "Not much left here, but maybe something useful." The girl's heart pounded. Her trembling fingers dug into her cloak. Marcus leaned close and whispered, "Stay hidden, no matter what." His calm voice steadied her, like a wall between her and the chaos. The raiders passed nearby, their weapons scraping against broken metal. For a moment, one of them paused, his eyes narrowing at the shadows. The girl almost cried out, fear burning in her chest. But Marcus placed a hand gently over hers, steadying her silence. The raider turned away after a moment, laughing at some cruel joke. Slowly, the voices faded into the distance, leaving only echoes behind. When it was safe, the girl let out a shaky breath, tears spilling down her face. "I would have been taken if you were not here," she whispered. Marcus shook his head, his voice firm. "You are still here because you chose to stay strong." She looked at him, shocked by his words, her chest filling with warmth she did not understand. Days passed as they moved through the broken station. They shared food, water, and silence, but slowly that silence grew softer. At night, Marcus told small stories of human cities, bright with lights and music. The girl listened, eyes wide, imagining worlds she had never seen. In return, she spoke of her people's stars, of songs sung before battle, of colors that painted her world. Together, they began to weave something fragile but real: trust. One evening, as they sat near a broken wall, Marcus noticed her shivering. Without hesitation, he removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth startled her, the kindness even more. She looked at him with wide eyes, her voice soft. "Why do you keep giving me pieces of yourself?" Marcus met her gaze, his tone steady, "Because pieces can be shared and still leave us whole." Her chest ached with emotion she could not name, her heart whispering things she dared not speak. But the world outside was not kind. As the wind howled through the ruins, the sound of heavy engines shook the ground. Marcus rose instantly, his eyes narrowing. The girl stood too, fear gripping her again. Something was coming, something bigger than raiders, bigger than broken machines. And in that moment, both of them knew the bond they had built would be tested in fire. The night grew darker, and in the distance, shadows moved with purpose. Enemies stronger, faster, and merciless were closing in. The girl clutched the coat around her shoulders, her heart racing. This time, she wondered, would she be the one to save him? The ground shook as the engines roared closer. Marcus pulled the girl into cover behind a wall of broken steel. The air filled with dust, the smell of burning fuel thick and heavy. Through the cracks, they saw lights cutting through the darkness, harsh and white. It was not raiders this time, but a squad of armor hunters. Machines and men working together, their voices sharp and cruel. They searched with precision, their weapons humming with deadly energy. The girl's heart pounded, her breath caught in her throat. "They will find us," she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice low. "Not if we move first." He led her through the shadows, every step silent, every breath careful. But the hunters spread wide, their machines scanning with red beams. The girl stumbled once, a loose rock shifting beneath her foot. The sound echoed, and instantly one of the machines turned its glowing eyes toward them. Alarms blared, voices shouted, and the silence shattered. Marcus pushed the girl forward. "Run," he ordered, his weapon firing at the machine. The shots sparked against its armor, slowing it but not stopping it. The girl's legs burned as she sprinted through the ruins, fear clawing at her chest. Behind her, Marcus fought with sharp, precise movements, his gunfire echoing like thunder. But more hunters closed in, their shadows stretching across the cracked floor. She turned back once and saw Marcus fall to one knee, blood staining his side. Her heart froze, her steps faltered. "Go," he shouted, forcing himself to rise, firing again. Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to obey, wanted to run, but her body would not move. The image of him standing alone against the hunters carved itself into her soul. For the first time, she felt the fire he had spoken of, the choice to fight against death. Her fear burned, but beneath it rose something stronger. She grabbed a shard of broken metal from the ground, her hands shaking but determined. With a cry she did not know she could make, she rushed toward the closest machine. The shard plunged into its exposed joint, sparks bursting as it shrieked. The machine collapsed, and the girl stumbled back, her chest heaving. Marcus's eyes widened, surprise and pride flashing in them. But the battle was not over. 3 more hunters moved in, their weapons glowing. Marcus fired, hitting one, but his strength was fading, his body weakening. The girl stood beside him, trembling but unbroken. She whispered, "I will not leave you. Not now, not ever." Her words gave Marcus a surge of strength, his hand steady on the weapon. Together they fought, side by side, human and alien, against the storm. The clash filled the ruins with fire and light. Each strike, each shot, each breath was a fight for life. The girl's body screamed with pain, but she refused to stop. Every moment she thought of how she had begged to be left behind. Now she knew she had been wrong. Life was worth fighting for, and so was he. At last, the hunters fell, broken machines sparking, armored men silent on the floor. The silence that followed was sharp, broken only by the girl's ragged breathing. Marcus dropped to the ground, his weapon falling from his hand. Blood spread across his coat, his face pale, but his eyes still burning. The girl fell to her knees beside him, her hands pressing against his wound. "Stay with me," she begged, her voice breaking. "Do not leave me now." Marcus's gaze met hers, soft despite the pain. "You fought," he whispered. "You chose to live." Tears streamed down her face. "Because of you," she said, her voice trembling. He gave a weak smile. "No, because you had it inside you all along." Her chest ached with a mixture of grief and hope. She refused to believe this was the end. The night was not over, and danger still lurked beyond the shadows. But in that moment, the bond between them burned brighter than fear. For the first time, she was not begging to be left behind. For the first time, she was begging for him to stay. And in the silence of the broken station, the future waited, uncertain and fragile. But it was theirs to fight for, together. The night was long, but the girl refused to let Marcus slip away. Her small hands pressed against his wound, her voice whispering again and again, "Stay, do not leave me." Marcus's breathing was shallow, yet his eyes stayed open, drawn to her determination. He had saved her again and again, but now it was she who refused to let go. When dawn came, the gray light revealed the broken station in silence. The hunters lay scattered, machines dead, weapons burnt out. The girl helped Marcus sit up, her arms trembling but strong enough to lift. "You should not move," she said, her voice shaking, but her eyes fierce. Marcus gave a faint smile. "If I stop moving, I stop fighting." The words struck her heart, reminding her of everything he had taught her. They left the station slowly, the girl supporting his weight, step by step. Each step felt like carrying the world, but she refused to stumble. Her people had once called her weak, had abandoned her without looking back. Now, with Marcus leaning on her, she knew they had been wrong. She was not weak. She was not useless. She had chosen to fight. As they reached the edge of the ruins, the horizon stretched wide before them. The land beyond was unknown, filled with danger, but also with possibility. The girl looked at Marcus, his face pale, but his eyes steady. "Where do we go?" she asked softly, fear and hope tangled in her voice. Marcus took a deep breath, his voice quiet but firm. "Forward." For days they traveled, resting when his wound demanded, moving when strength allowed. They shared the last of their food, drinking from cracked pipes and rainwater. The girl's hands learned to bind wounds, to search for hidden paths. Marcus taught her how to fire his weapon, how to stand firm when fear rose like fire. Each day, they carried each other, not just in body, but in spirit. One night, as the stars shone faintly through the heavy clouds, the girl spoke. "I once begged to be left behind," she whispered, her voice breaking. Marcus turned his head toward her, listening in silence. "I believed I was nothing, that my life had no worth," she continued, her hands trembling. "But you saw something in me, something I did not see." Tears filled her eyes, falling like quiet rain. "If you had left me, I would have vanished in those ruins, but now I want to live." Marcus's hand reached for hers, weak but steady. His voice was rough but gentle. "You were never nothing. You only needed someone to remind you." Her heart ached at his words, her tears falling freely. In that moment, she knew her future was no longer empty, no longer broken. It was bound to him, to the fight they had chosen together. By the time the sun rose again, their path had led them beyond the ruins. Ahead stretched a valley, green among the gray, small signs of life returning. Birds circled in the distance, and rivers glimmered beneath the light. The girl stopped, her breath catching in wonder. For the first time, she saw not death but hope. Marcus leaned against her, his strength slowly returning. Together they looked at the horizon, silent but united. Once, she had begged to be left behind, her voice full of despair. Now, with a human at her side, she whispered a different truth. "I will walk forward," she said, "not alone, but with you." Marcus's faint smile carried more strength than any weapon. The world ahead was uncertain, filled with enemies and storms yet to come. But the bond they carried was stronger than fear, stronger than law, stronger than the darkness. They had chosen each other, and that choice meant survival. That choice meant a future. And so they walked on, step by step, into the unknown horizon. Not as strangers, not as broken souls, but as something new, a girl once abandoned, and a human who refused to leave her. Together, they carried a truth greater than their pain. That life was not about being left behind, but about finding the courage to walk forward, hand in hand,